I already sort of briefly talked about Sonic, so we'll just get him out of the way. His campaign is the overall best out of the 6. He has the best controls, the best level design, the most fun gameplay, and has the simplest objectives, and is overall a good 3D successor to the classic 2D games. Tails' campaign is alright. In his stages, you're racing against either Sonic or Eggman. While his stages are fun, they kinda sorta feel like an afterthought. Like, it feels like not much thought was put into them, and you can just cheese through most of them. They're still fun, though. In the Knuckles stages, your objective is to collect Master Emerald Shards, with there being 3 in each stage. It's pretty fun to explore these environments and to find certain areas that you wouldn't find as any other characters. They're also pretty easy, too. Overall, the Knuckles stages are pretty enjoyable. Amy's gameplay is centered around getting to the goal while being chased by Zero. It's pretty fun to use Amy's hammer to bounce off of shit, and some of the level design is pretty good, especially in Hot Shelter. However, her startup speed is way too slow, and her momentum breaks way too easily, making her a little bit annoying to control. Her gameplay is just okay. In Gamma's gameplay, you basically shoot shit. You lock onto as many targets as you can and release the fire button. In these stages, there is a timer that counts down, and if it reaches 0, you die. Destroying enemies adds time, and the more you lock onto, the more time is added. While this is a neat concept, the execution is quite underwhelming. His stages are so easy and short that you can really just breeze through them without even having to destroy almost any of the enemies. The only stage that actually takes use of Gamma's gameplay is Hot Shelter. Overall, Gamma's gameplay is just shallow. This goes back to what I said earlier about how the level design has to compensate for multiple different playstyles, and as a result, these playstyles are held back. Gamma is the prime example of this. Even then, his gameplay is still decently fun. So yeah, that's basically all of the playstyles in Sonic Adventure. That's it. I'm totally not leaving anything out. Nope. Nothing more. That's all there is. Oh, God. Okay, yes, there is one more playstyle to cover. Big the Cat's fishing stages. I'm just gonna put this in the most nicest way possible. Fuck these stages. Big the Cat's gameplay is literally the fucking worst. For one thing, who thought this was a good idea? Yes, because obviously whenever I think about Sonic the Hedgehog, or any action platformer for that matter, I obviously think about fishing. That's obviously the most important thing about these games. Actually, how about no? When I think about these games, I don't think about fishing, I think about fast-paced action. Having a gameplay style like fishing in an action platformer is like having a first-person swimming segment in a character action game. Oh, wait, they did that in the first Devil May Cry game. Okay. Well, it's like having beat-em-up gameplay in a Pac-Man World game. Oh, wait. That's what the majority of World 3 was. But still, the point I'm trying to make is, it doesn't fit very well. Not to mention, the stages are barely even functional. Most of the time whenever I catch Froggy, he basically manages to get away without giving me the chance to catch him. And on the rare instances that I do get to catch him, and I try to reel him in, close to achieving my goal, the game decides to fuck things up and let him get away. And no, it's not the stamina that breaks, it's the collision detection. Worst of all, Big's entire story is basically pointless. You could literally remove him from the story and nothing would have to be changed. Nothing of substance would be lost. As far as Big as a character goes, while I don't find him to be a bad character, I do feel that the Sonic fandom's attempt to turn him into an LOL funny random meme XD has kinda ruined the novelty of his character for me. It was really bad in 2017, and especially horrid in 2016. Every meme, every post made by the Sonic Twitter referencing this motherfucker made my hatred for him and his playstyle grow more and more. Alright, so in total we have one playstyle that's pretty good, one that's pretty bad, and 4 that are just okay. That's pretty good, actually. So, using the other characters as an excuse to trash Sonic Adventure doesn't really work, considering how most of them are just fine. Now, if you don't care about any of the other characters and just want to play as Sonic only, then you can just do that. You get fast-paced gameplay with 10 cool zones and a couple of neat bosses here and there. Granted, you won't get to play the actual final boss if you're just in it for Sonic, but whatever. The other 5 stores, plus the additional final boss, is there if you want more. But they focus mostly on Sonic, and if they can get that right, then we're good. Case closed. The stages are some of the most memorable when it comes to 3D Sonic. Emerald Coast, Windy Valley, Twinkle Park, Speed Highway, you name it. The level variety is very good. This game is also very spectacle driven, and it throws a lot of unique level set pieces and crazy scenarios at you. I'm talking getting chased by killer orchids, grabbing onto the bottom of helicopters as it flies away, acting as a means of transportation, scaling down a giant building, running away from a giant boulder, snowboarding down a snowy mountain kinda like the original Ice Cap in Sonic 3 and Knuckles, and avoiding the missiles of a giant cannon on the bottom deck of a big aircraft, then directing a rocket back at the cannon, destroying it. Then you appear on top of the deck, avoiding the missiles and bullets from the turrets, with pieces of the ship crumbling off as you run through it, overall creating a sense of urgency. Those are just some examples. Overall, the sheer variety and spectacle is pretty great, and the sense of scale also adds a bit of immersion to the game as well. The level design is, for the most part, good. There is a good mix between speed and platforming, and while the stages are a bit linear, they're a good kind of linear, straight to the point but still decently open-ended, with some neat secret hidden and occasional split pathways. There is actually one level in this game that was cut during development that I wish they kept, this one being the beta version of Windy Valley. This stage looks so huge with so many different pathways and tons of platforming to boot. Unfortunately, it got cut, probably because the developers thought the players would get lost in it. After all, it is the second stage. You can tell the developers were really passionate about it, going as far as to reference it in one of Amy's cutscenes. It's easy to see that they were disappointed with the removal of it. Fortunately, a couple of modders were able to discover a layout for the stage in the files of one of the game's prototypes. So the modders recreated the layout and the textures, and eventually the beta Windy Valley saw the light of day as a mod. And let's just say, it looks glorious. I totally would have preferred this over the actual Windy Valley that we got in the end. Not saying the one we got was bad or anything. In fact, I quite like the final Windy Valley, but it's a bit too simple, and even a bit too automated. Granted, it is the second stage though, so it kinda makes sense why. Actually, that's kind of an issue I have a lot with the game's level design. There's a lot of automation. Like, for example, in this game, when you go into a loop, instead of having to build up the momentum to go through it, it just pulls you in. Granted, all this automation is understandable considering the technical limitations of the time. Having steps like loops and corkscrews require player input would have caused a lot of technical problems. So they had to do this. Well, whatever. At least there aren't too many scripted sections, and as long as they actually work, then we are good. Okay. Eesh. Alright.
Fast. Just
yeah. Whoa! What? Oh my god.
okay. We gotta.
What the hell is that?
I might as well talk about one of this game's bigger issues, the collision detection in the camera. This game is very buggy. The collision detection can be very wonky and off at times. There have been moments where I was going through a scripted section and the game just glitched out, ultimately killing me in the end. although these can be avoided easily if you just play through the game normally. Though there is one section of the game where the collision detection is at its worst. And of course I'm referring to that stupid frickin' snake section in the Lost World. In terms of design alone, it's still really bad, but the collision detection just overall makes it flat out awful. Oftentimes I find myself slipping off the snake and then falling to my death. And when I was recording, I died multiple different times. Most of them weren't even my fault. Usually most of my deaths in this game are me just being fucking stupid. But here though, this is just... But I will say this, the game is still playable at the very least. I can still get through the game from beginning to end, experiencing only a few problems here and there, and most of them I can just shrug away. Honestly, I don't really care about the glitches that much. As long as the contents of the game are enjoyable, then I really don't give a fuck. You see, here's how I think. I'd rather play a game that's rough around the edges and glitchy, but still really imaginative and interesting and fun to play, than a game that's technically refined and performs well, but is really dull, bland, and derivative. However, if a game is glitchy to the point where it's practically unplayable, then yes, it's a shit game. Thankfully, Sonic Adventure does not fall into this category. For the most part. The boss fights are hit or miss. Some of them are either really pathetic or drag out for far too long. The worst fight in the game is Chaos 4. This fight just drags out for far too long, and most of it is just Chaos screwing around underwater, occasionally doing a weak-ass attack once in a while, and occasionally popping his head out allowing for you to attack. Again, this fight just drags out and is overall really boring. And you wanna know what the worst part about it is? You have to fight this boss 3 times. Yeah, that's right. 3 frickin' times. There are boss fights in this game, though, that are actually pretty decent, even being good, like Chaos 2, the Egg Viper, the Egg Walker, Zero, and Beta. The hub worlds are pretty cool. They're not too small, but they're not too big either. Getting from one objective to the next is pretty simple, and not very troublesome, if you're paying attention, that is. There are also some really neat landmarks, and I really like how it interconnects with the stages. Located within these hub worlds are upgrades for the playable characters that either improve already existing abilities or adds in a new ability. This kinda reminds me of the upgrade system in Mega Man X. Personally, I like this a lot, and many of these are cool, like the Sonic's Light Speed Dash and Tails' Infinite Tail Attack, but some of them are pretty useless, like Amy's Spinning Hammer. Within these hub worlds are Chow Gardens, but I wanted to save discussion about these for when I review Sonic Adventure 2, so yeah. Newly introduced in Sonic Adventure are emblems. You obtain these by completing the regular stage objectives and finding them throughout the hub worlds. But you may be wondering, what do you earn when you collect all of the emblems? Let's talk about the presentation for a moment. When this game was initially released, the graphics were pretty impressive at the time. Nowadays, they're kinda dated, but even if they are sorta dated, one thing that does hold up is the art direction. It's like a good mix between the cartoonish style and a more grounded reality-like style, resulting in a very nice aesthetic. The character designs are also pretty great too. In general, Sonic Adventure and its sequel probably has one of the best art styles in the entire series. While the cutscenes are admittedly bad, for the time this game was released, they were passable. The voice acting gets a lot of crap, but to be honest, the voice acting isn't really even bad. Some of it is, but some of it is also pretty good. And keep in mind, this was probably the actor's first time, so you can't really expect much. The soundtrack is just really good. There was a lot of variety with the different styles of music, like rock, techno, jazz, synth, hip-hop, and even some tribal music, and many more styles. The compositions are so damn good, and the variety of instruments and their usage is very pleasing. There are also a number of vocal themes, most of them being specifically character themes. Most of them are pretty great, with Amy's theme being an exception. Sonic Adventure is also the game that brought Crush 40 into the Sonic series. Crush 40 consists of Jun Tsunoi, as the guitarist who previously did work on the other Sonic soundtracks, like Sonic 3 and Knuckles, and Johnny Giueli as the vocalist, who was also the vocalist of Hardline and Actual Rudy Pell. I don't have much to say other than they're pretty good. Crush 40 debuted on Sonic Adventure with the song Open Your Heart being the main theme of the game, and it's definitely a classic with a message stating that even in the worst of times, things will get better, and it will all be fine in the end. Sonic Adventure's soundtrack is just overall great. So after you beat all 6 stories, the final story is unlocked. In this, we find out that Chaos actually survives and goes on to beat the shit out of Eggman and Knuckles and then steals 6 of the Chaos Emeralds. Upon finding out about this, Sonic and Tails rush to get the 7th Emerald, but they are too late as Chaos beats them to it. With all 7 Emeralds, Chaos achieves his perfect form and goes on to destroy Station Square. Upon arriving to the destroyed city, Sonic and friends find the used up Chaos Emeralds, and upon observation, Sonic finds out that only the negative energy was drained, leaving the positive energy to be used. So, with the encouragement of his friends and Tikal, Sonic uses the remaining positive Chaos Emerald energy to transform into Super Sonic, thus commencing the final boss. The final boss is, well, it has its atmosphere, it's got the kick-ass music, and not to mention, it is a supersonic final battle that's actually based around the game's central mechanics, which is pretty rare. It is climactic for what it's worth, however, on a quality standpoint, it leaves a lot to be desired. This all has to do with the previously mentioned awful collision detection. I'm always getting stuck in the fucking stage geometry, making the fight more frustrating than it should be. It's already hard enough trying to avoid his attacks within the narrow space you're given. But this is just... no, this is just too much. I'm sorry, but Doomsday Zone, this is not. But still, it's pretty epic. After the fight, all of the evil's beaten out of Chaos, and he turns good again. Then Chaos and Nicole ascend to the skies to rest in peace, to which we don't see Chaos again. Well, at least not until Sonic Forces. Sonic then runs off into the distance, and then the game ends. Roll credits. So that's Sonic Adventure. Is it flawed? Yes. Has it aged poorly? Also yes. Is it a bad game, though? No. Does it deserve hate? Hell no. This game, along with other 3D titles of the 90s, shares similar problems, yet all those other games get a free pass, and yet Sonic Adventure is the one that gets trashed? Sure, it did have Big the Cat, but that's just one playstyle out of 6, with the other 5 being alright. And even if you don't care about the other playstyles, then as I've said before, just play Sonic's campaign and you're good. But even then, most of the other playstyles are not bad. In the end of the day, Sonic Adventure was Sonic Team's first truly 3D Sonic game, so of course there's gonna be flaws. But that doesn't matter, honestly, because you can tell that Sonic Team had a lot of passion and ambition when making this title. And honestly, I think it paid off. So, yeah, Sonic Adventure is just that, a decent game. It has its flaws, but it has its highlights that make it a worthwhile title. Next time on the Sonic Retrospective, we will take a look at the successor to Sonic Adventure 2.